Hello and welcome to the third installment in this short video series on the proposal assignment in research methods. And where we are right now is in defining variables. Now, the thing to realize is that there's sort of phases in this. We start with a research question, and the research question is largely using words that everybody can understand. They're the basic concepts that probably inspired the research itself, laid out in terms of you're looking to answer that question. Then you have to define the independent and dependent variables. Now, because we're replicating a study, you can reflect on how they did that. They had a research question, and they defined how are they going to measure the independent and dependent variables. So that becomes a function of your measurements, the tools that you're going to use, partially the method that you're actually going to use to record data. It could be the questions in a survey, it could be physiological measures, it could be the timing of something. You're going to be timing how long it takes for something to happen or anything like that. Those become, you move from that English into the verbiage of your measures. And then in the next video, we're going to talk about your hypotheses. And your hypotheses are stated in the language related to your operational definitions, not your research questions. Sometimes they're very similar, but sometimes, as you're going to see in my example, there's quite a difference between the research question and then what we're actually going to look at in this particular study. So let's take a look first at the instructions I gave in the course book. If we look at the course book here, defining variables, it goes through the purpose and the skills you're supposed to get from this. And very short piece here. And in the rubric, I want to explain, there's the title page and, of course, the APA format expectations. And then there's basically two pathways that I want you to describe. Now, one is the source article pathway. Describe the pathway from research question to variables to measures, and then describe the pathway from research questions to variables to measures in your study. I'm not asking that you have sections like that. You should not have a section source article pathway and then research pathway. Within the context of your essay for defining variables, you're going to cover that stuff. And probably the best way I can explain that is with the example that I did. So let's take a look at the paper that I'm providing for you as an example. Here I have, first off, I copied the paper I duplicated the paper before this, the literature review, and just changed the headers and the titles, just so I didn't have to rewrite this whole thing. So I just redefined the header, I just did another title, did another date, and you'll see at the end of this, I just have the same references that I had in that other paper. Okay, so what I did is I introduced defining variables by first starting off with the original research question. The original research question was, what is the impact of visual scene characteristics on perceptions of time? Now, the thinking process of this is that there are many, many characteristics of visual scenes. Color, saturation, focus, composition, all of those things in addition to the ones I'm going to be looking at. So this is still pretty vague. The question, the large question, is how do these characteristics impact our perception of time? Now, our perception of time can be measured in many, many different ways. I could have them write down how long. I could time how long. I could have them make choices to guess how long. There's all kinds of ways in which we can measure time. So you see in the research question, you're not quite sure, in this example, what I'm going to be studying. So it pushes the notion that I have to define what I mean by visual scene characteristics and what I mean by perceptions of time. So let's look back and see how I did that. And what I did is I incorporated an explanation of what was going on in the original study, in the source study, and then described how I'm going to do it in my study. So we start off in this research question. The independent variable is the visual scene, and the dependent variable is the subject's perception of time. I'm defining these as independent and dependent variables. The characteristics of the visual scene that were examined by my source article included scene size and clutter. At that point, I'm defining, of all the different things that could be characteristics of a scene, these are the two I'm looking at. I'm looking at those two characteristics, and in a given image, it's been pre-rated as either a large scene or a small scene, and also the amount of stuff, the clutter inside of that. The images in the original experiment, I'm telling you where they got their images, and I was able to get copies of those images as well. So you'll notice that these are links here. There's the Vision Lab, the Icelandic Vision Lab, and then within that is a collection called the Scene Size by Clutter database right there. These will not, because these are web resources, they just appear as links. They don't need to be in my references. The link is enough. I'm not referencing an article. I'm just saying a source. That's all you need to do. Put it in the in-text citation. The citation that I have for my source article, however, is represented in my references. In fact, the references that I have in this document are the same references that I referenced in the literature review, even though in this document I'm not actually referencing those articles. I go into describing that collection right there, and in the original study, the images were presented to subjects for variable times from 300 to 900 milliseconds. Now I get into what I'm going to do. In this study, the actual duration of the images presented to subjects will be held constant. And then I just state it. The operational definition of the independent variable in this study is the presentation of 36 images pre-rated in categories of space and clutter for a fixed duration. That is my independent variable. I then go on to the dependent variable. In the original study, the dependent variable was measured by having subjects indicate their sense of how long the image was presented, either long or short. The definitions of the dependent variable in this study is the same. Then a summary statement. Therefore, the operational definition for the independent variable of visual scene is defined as a sequence of 36 images that have been pre-rated by space and clutter. The operational definition for the dependent variable of perception of time will be the subject's choice of either long or short for each image. So you see, as I kind of trace the pathway, what the original article did, and then I talk about what I'm going to do. And obviously, many of you are going to be doing variations on the theme that has been presented in your source article, and I give you an example of doing that. Remember, this is a go at this with courage. It took me a while to kind of like nail down how I was going to write this, and it should be kind of a challenge to put this in a very condensed form. But what it helped me do, even in my own doing of this assignment, made it crystal clear what I'm going to be doing. It really touches on a lot of my methods. It kind of took this thing that, they talked about this for pages and pages, and I boiled it down to exactly what I'm going to do. And that's what I want you to have the same sense. So after you've defined your variables, it's sort of like, I kind of know what's going to be going on here. I have to create something that's going to show these images for a defined amount of time, then the image is going to go away, and then I have to have my subjects press a button of some kind that's saying long or short. That's it. I have to create some sort. That's my experiment that I'm going to be doing. Then I'll talk about how I'm going to analyze that data when we get into the methods paper. It's what am I going to do with that data? But right now, in the defining variables part of this assignment, you have the title page, make it look just like this one. Boring. Make it look boring. That's what I tell people about APA. Make it look boring. Write the paper just doing what I just did. You introduce with the research question, then you combine those pathways of independent and dependent variables, kind of get you to the point of you know what you're doing, and then just insert your references at the end. Some of you may be using instruments that have been developed and used for this study. Those instruments, if you're using a personality test or some sort of measure of that they're going to be writing that's published, you're going to be copying that or from the original article, you do have to cite those. You're going to have to talk about them here. In terms of your definition is going to be the results of that particular instrument, and you're going to have to cite the source of the instrument. It might be your source article. If they created the instrument, it might be another source that they cite where they got that article. Where they got that instrument. So I don't have an instrument. I just have that picture database. So the citations for that were simply the websites where those pictures are. An instrument will have an article attached to it somewhere in the references when that instrument was developed. And that's the one that you need to find. And it will be in your references. It'll be clearly stated in the source article. It'll tell you it'll give the name and the date of that original instrument, and then you go in the sources, and there's your reference for it. You might even have to go get that reference, that article, in order to get the instrument that you're going to be using in your study. So that's this part of the assignment. Good luck with it, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results of this. Should be great. Take care.